On the morning of the 23rd of June 1975, a groundskeeper at the Royal Perth Golf Club discovered a massive Dodge Phoenix parked illegally on the 12th fairway. Slumped across the front seat was a woman wearing an expensive satin ball gown, executed with 4 precise shots to the back of the head. The official police narrative was immediate and convenient. This was an underworld hit, a tragic but inevitable end for a notorious brothel madam who had crossed the wrong violent criminals. But that was a lie. It wasn't the criminal underworld that pulled the trigger. It was the very people sworn to protect the city. The woman in the car was Shirley Finn, and she was assassinated just 48 hours before she was scheduled to publicly expose a massive, multi-million-dollar bribery ring. And the proof is hidden in the case files. The exact detectives assigned to investigate her murder were the ones she had been paying off for years. In this video, we are going to tear apart this decades-long cover-up, examine the physical evidence the police intentionally destroyed, and expose how the highest levels of the justice system orchestrated the perfect execution. To understand the sheer audacity of this crime, you have to understand the ecosystem in which Shirley Finn operated. In the 1970s, Perth, Western Australia, was a boomtown. It was isolated, incredibly wealthy, and entirely controlled by a quiet, unbreakable alliance between politicians, businessmen, and the police. Shirley was a businesswoman. She operated high-end brothels, catering exclusively to the elite. Politicians, judges, and high-ranking police officers weren't just her clients, they were her business partners. During this era, the Western Australian Police Vice Squad operated under an unofficial doctrine known as containment. In theory, it meant keeping illicit activities restricted to certain areas. In reality, it was a government-sanctioned extortion racket. Brothel madams were allowed to operate freely, so long as they paid exorbitant weekly taxes directly into the pockets of the Vice Squad detectives. Shirley was paying tens of thousands of dollars a year to the police. In exchange, she was untouchable. But let's look at the crime scene, because from the very first hour, the physical evidence contradicted everything the police claimed. Shirley was found in her own car. She had been shot 4 times in the head with a .22 caliber rifle. The grouping of the shots was incredibly tight, fired from just inches away, directly behind her left ear. This wasn't a frantic struggle. This was an execution by someone sitting comfortably in the back seat, someone she trusted enough to let into her car in the dead of night. Furthermore, Shirley was found wearing a spectacular, custom-made ball gown. Why would a seasoned underworld figure dress like she was attending a royal gala for a midnight meeting with a hitman? She wouldn't. She dressed up because she believed she was meeting someone of immense status, someone from the very top of the social or political ladder. And then, there are the bizarre anomalies that the police immediately ignored. When Shirley's body was found, her house keys were missing from her purse. Yet, hours later, when investigators searched her heavily secured home, there were no signs of forced entry. Nothing was stolen. But days later, her keys miraculously reappeared back inside her house. Who had the power to take her keys from a secured crime scene, enter her home, search it for evidence, and return the keys without raising a single alarm? Only the police. But the most glaring, unforgivable curiosity is the timeline of her final hours. Multiple witnesses placed Shirley Finn at the police headquarters canteen on the night of her murder. She was seen drinking at the bar, deep in conversation with high-ranking detectives, just hours before a .22 caliber bullet tore through her skull. When those witnesses attempted to come forward and give their statements to the homicide squad, they were aggressively threatened, transferred, or told to keep their mouths shut. The last people to see Shirley Finn alive were the police. And the police made absolutely sure that fact was erased from the official record. So, why did the police need Shirley Finn dead? In early 1975, the Australian Taxation Office began heavily auditing Shirley's businesses. They hit her with a massive tax bill over $100,000, which in the 1970s was a staggering, ruinous amount of money. Shirley panicked, but she also felt a sense of righteous betrayal. She had been paying the police and politicians off for years. She had handed over the modern equivalent of millions of dollars in protection money. So, she reached out to her partners in the government and law enforcement, demanding they help her pay the tax bill. After all, they had taken a massive cut of the profits. They refused. They cut her off. And that was their fatal mistake, because Shirley Finn was not a woman who went down quietly. She began telling her inner circle that she was going to blow the whistle. She prepared a dossier of names, dates, and payout amounts. She threatened to hold a press conference and expose the entire syndicate. She threatened to name the head of the vice squad. She threatened to name the minister for police. She scheduled a secret meeting for the night of June 22nd, telling her lover she had to meet the big boys to sort out the tax issue once and for all. She put on her best ball gown to show them she was an equal. She drove to the golf course, and she never came back. This is where this case stops being a murder mystery and becomes a deeply infuriating masterclass in systemic rot. When a high-profile citizen is assassinated while threatening to expose police corruption, an impartial outside agency must be brought in to investigate. That is the foundational bedrock of any functioning justice system. But that is not what happened in Western Australia. The investigation into Shirley Finn's murder was heavily influenced and controlled by the very men she was threatening to expose. The head of the vice squad at the time was Detective Sergeant Bernie Johnson. By multiple accounts, Bernie Johnson was Shirley's bagman. He was the officer allegedly collecting her bribes. He was the man with the most to lose if she talked. And incredibly, Bernie Johnson was allowed to inject himself directly into the homicide investigation. The systematic destruction of evidence that followed is difficult to comprehend. It is a level of blatant, unapologetic corruption that makes a mockery of the word justice. Let's look at the forensic evidence. The murder weapon, the .22 caliber rifle, was never officially found. However, ballistics experts noted that the bullets recovered from Shirley's skull matched the exact ammunition issued to the Western Australian police at the time. Let's look at the car. The Dodge Phoenix was a mobile crime scene. It should have been preserved for years. Instead, it was thoroughly scrubbed, cleaned of all forensic evidence, and hastily returned to Shirley's estate to be sold off as quickly as possible. The police literally washed the blood of their victim away before independent experts could properly test it. But the most sickening aspect of this cover-up wasn't the destruction of physical evidence. It was the utter destruction of human lives. Shirley's lover, Rose Black, knew too much. She knew who Shirley was meeting that night. When Rose attempted to speak to the media and honest investigators, she was subjected to a campaign of psychological terror orchestrated by the police force. She was followed. Her home was raided. She was aggressively threatened with being framed for drug trafficking if she didn't shut her mouth. The message from the police was clear. We killed her, and we will kill you too. And there is absolutely no one you can call for help, because we are the ones who answer the phones. Think about the profound helplessness of that situation. Who do you call when the police are the murderers? Who do you report a crime to when the detectives taking your statement are the ones holding the smoking gun? Decades passed. The politicians who benefited from Shirley's silence retired with full pensions and public accolades. The detectives who orchestrated the hit were promoted, living out their lives on golf courses and in luxury homes paid for by the blood money they extorted. The system protected itself brilliantly. It stonewalled, it delayed, it intimidated. It wasn't until 2017, over 40 years after Shirley was executed, that an official inquest was finally granted, largely due to the relentless, agonizing fight by Shirley's daughter, Juliet. In that courtroom, the horrific truth finally bled out into the public record. Former police officers, now elderly men no longer terrified of their superiors, took the stand. They testified under oath that they had seen Shirley drinking with detectives on the night she died. They testified that high-ranking officers had explicitly ordered them to falsify reports. They testified that Bernie Johnson and other powerful figures had operated the vice squad like a mafia syndicate. A former police officer named Sidney Woodward testified that a hitman, allegedly hired by the police, had actually confessed to him, stating he was paid to put 4 bullets in Shirley's head to protect a prominent politician. The evidence of systemic, top-down corruption was overwhelming. The coroner's report concluded that the original investigation was entirely compromised. It was an official, legal acknowledgement that the police had engaged in a massive cover-up. But this is where the outrage truly solidifies. Because despite all this proof, despite the witness testimonies, despite the coroner's damning findings, no one was ever charged. The justice system had successfully run out the clock. By the time the truth was allowed to be spoken, the primary suspects were either dead or conveniently suffering from severe dementia, rendering them legally unfit to stand trial. The system didn't fail. It functioned exactly as it was designed to. It insulated the wealthy, protected the corrupt, and denied a murdered woman justice until the very men who killed her were safely in the ground. Shirley Finn did not die because she was a criminal. She died because the law enforcement apparatus of Western Australia was acting as an organized crime syndicate, and she threatened their bottom line. She was executed by the state, and the state investigated itself, clearing itself of all wrongdoing. It is a chilling reminder that true power does not lie in breaking the law. True power lies in writing the official report after the law has been broken. If you thought a police force orchestrating a hit on a whistleblower was infuriating, wait until you hear how a billionaire bought his way out of a double homicide. Click the video on your screen to see the case they tried to bury forever.